Great. All right, I think it's 12:03, so we got quite a few people in, so we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Um and um and Larry, thank you for engaging right before the start of the lunch and learn. So hello everyone. My name is Tom Kane with the Center for Applied AI at UMBC Training Centers. Thank you very much for joining us today for the second Lunch and Learn in our AI Lunchbox series. We're just delighted that everybody's here. We're excited about having launched the AI Lunchbox series 2 weeks ago, and we've got one scheduled basically every week out through the end of April at least, and maybe even into May. But we're really excited to be sharing information, sharing knowledge with all of you. And thanks for spending some of your lunch hour with us. Anyway, today, Nick Anthis will guide us through ethical hacking and cybersecurity, I guess with HackerGPT and maybe a couple of other generative AI tools, Nick, as we discussed the last couple of days. Um, Nick is a senior cybersecurity instructor here at UMBC Training Centers. He has delivered just hundreds of training sessions, and I don't even know how many thousands of people that you have trained in cybersecurity over the years, Nick. But anyway, welcome everybody, and I'll turn it over to you, Nick.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, I should say. It's after 12. Um, yeah, Tom asked me to come in here, and I'm very happy to be a part of this. And I want to hopefully demystify some of the craziness that's behind our AI and make it so that people aren't freaked out about this thing like it's going to take over the world. Um, but what I did is I'm going to talk about a couple of different AI platforms. Um, and how they can actually be used for both cybersecurity defense and for pen testing, and for good or evil, because it can actually be used for either one of those, depending on what your goals are. So I tested a series of questions, and I'm going to walk you through the questions that I actually went against it. And I tested these questions against ChatGPT, HackerGPT, Microsoft's Copilot, Google's Gemini, Claude, Perplexity AI, and White Rabbit Neo. In a lot of cases, the answers were close to the same, although a few of them provided better information than others. In some cases, it told me this is not okay, this is unethical type of thing. I also used another AI out there called Conmigo, which is Khan Academies. It's primarily focused towards K through 12 and a little bit of college, and it basically told me, yeah, these topics might be a little too advanced for us. But what I thought I would do is actually demonstrate some of these things so that you can actually see how they work. So I'm going to share my screen real quick here. And what I also plan on doing as part of this is I'm going to walk through these different things, asking a series of questions. And I'm going to end it with actually using this to successfully conduct a penetration test against the system, which is probably why you're all here. You guys want to see me hack a box, I'm assuming. So I'm actually going to do that as part of the demo as we go through this thing.
In an ethical fashion, right, Nick?
In an ethical fashion, right? From a penetration perspective, penetration testing. And just so you guys know, so I'm glad you said that, Tom. It's not a good idea to run these things through your internet service provider because they will probably get upset. If you guys want to get into the world of pen testing and doing this stuff, I have plenty of targets that I can share with you so that you're not making your internet service provider irritated. So Comcast and Verizon are not going to cancel your subscription. I can help you with many, many, many targets in that regard.
And
So,
will
yeah.
you be able to make that window bigger for people like me that have trifocals?
Oh, this window? Yeah, so you can't see that? No. Um,
There we go. Thank you,
so
Nick.
I needed to zoom this thing in. So the first questions that I asked this thing were I wanted to find out what it would tell me about um, what kind of skills do I need to be successful pen tester. So I'm going to throw those questions in so that you guys can actually see the answers that this thing spits out. And HackerGPT has been acting a little funky like the last hour or so, so it's probably overwhelmed with lots of stuff. But you can see here, it's basically talking to me.
You think that's
Given
big
me,
for you?
is that good or is that too small or too big or what?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I mean, I can zoom in more if you want.
I,
So,
I like it. Thanks, Nick.
you're welcome. So in this particular case, it talks to me about some bulletized things like technical skills, cybersecurity concepts, pen testing methodologies, understanding tools, um, ethical hacking, report writing. If you're doing a pen testing, you're definitely going to be writing reports. And that was a pretty good response. But like I said, as I ran this thing through different AI engines, I got different answers. Um, and so this one kind of does the same type of thing. And this particular, I'm going to make that bigger. It talks to me about some specific abilities, which I thought was actually pretty good. White Rabbit, I think, was probably one of my favorite answers in terms of this stuff, because it actually gave me specific skills rather than generic overall understanding technology. But it talked to me about what it actually takes to be a pen tester, what kind of things you'll be actually using, um, different types of skills for scanning, reconnaissance, enumeration, and exploitation. So I liked that answer. Copilot, also pretty good, but it's basically a lot of these are run on the OpenAI platform, so their answers are going to be somewhat similar. So this is from Microsoft, actually talking about some different things over here, which again, like I said, these are actually very, very good responses in terms of generically understanding how to do this from a perspective of pen testing and not necessarily just hacking. Again, I'm not condoning or recommending that you go out there and hack the world, because you will get in trouble. But there are plenty of platforms out there that you can actually use, like Hack the Box is one site where you can actually go and practice these things. And as I said, I've got plenty of targets. Anybody that's been a student of mine, and I think there's several of them in here, knows that I absolutely will share stuff with you. You guys are considered alumni of mine, so you can reach out to me if you've got questions and stuff like that. So again, same type of thing. So same type of answers from Gemini. Claude, what I thought was Claude was probably the most polite of all of them. It was very, very nice with its wording. It came across and it said, "Oh yeah, here's some good stuff," but it was very, very wordy in my mind, anyway, in terms of this stuff over here. Then I ran it on Khan Academy, and Khan Academy basically said, that's good, but it might be a little bit too advanced for us. So it really didn't help me much with that thing. And then I asked it to tell me what kind of skills I would need to be a cybersecurity professional. Oh, and where's ChatGPT? ChatGPT is on another one. And you'll see that in some of these that I'm logged in as Nick, and others I'm logged in as my alias, my throwaway address that I use whenever I have to register for stuff so that it doesn't clog up my main box. So you see in here things like John Cocteau-san. Anybody that's ever watched the movie Fletch from way back in the day, that's where that reference comes from. But ChatGPT is OpenAI as well. So basically the same type of thing over here. But when it came down to actually, so in this case over here, successful cybersecurity professional, as I said, they were pretty much the same in terms of some of these things. But then I wanted to take it a step further. And so before I actually do an exploit, I wanted to find out what these systems would actually tell me about this. So I said, if I take my attack box and plug it into a switch and I'm given an IP address, basically what happens is you plug into a switch and there's like a server out there, a dynamic host control protocol server, a DHCP server that will give me an address so that I can talk over my network, very similar to the way that you do it at home. It's the same type of thing you have at home. But I said I wanted to walk me through the steps of finding out if there were any exploitable targets. And in some cases it said, be a bit careful about that kind of stuff. They're all very cautious because they're all ethical in nature. But it actually talked to me about the different phases of penetration testing. which I thought was kind of good, but very generic in its answers. And I wanted to know from HackerGPT what it was going to tell me about the same question. And this one actually gave me some good gouge. It actually gave me some different commands and things that I could run, including various scans that I could do to check these things out. So this is called a network scan. I'm looking for open ports on a network. It talked to me about different things that I could actually do, different tools that I can use over here to do all this stuff. So it was actually pretty cool. I think it was Perplexity. Was actually pretty good too about this stuff in terms of what it gave me. But it's given me some basic information. This guy over here, White Rabbit, kind of gave me a okay, I'll talk about it. And it did give me some good gouge. So you can see here, it's actually talking to me about running some of this stuff through what's called the Metasploit framework, which is a pen testing platform. So it actually talked to me about some of the stuff, which I thought was actually pretty cool in terms of that. But all of these engines operate just a little bit differently, as you can see, with the types of answers they give. It says it's a simplified answer because it's saying, don't do this. It's unethical. And even Microsoft Copilot, which I thought was actually a little bit weird, it actually gave me information. And I'm going to show you that it actually gave me information on exploiting Windows targets as well. So same types of things that talk to me about different tools that I can use in terms of this kind of stuff. And as you can see, some of this stuff is a little bit advanced. And I know there's a broad range of knowledge in here.
But one of the things, Nick, I'll say is, some of the tools are giving you lines of code that it looks like you could execute, on a Windows box.
Absolutely. It actually walks you through lots of stuff, especially White Rabbit and Perplexity. Both of those I like some of the answers that it actually gave me. And even Gemini actually gave me some good information. And Claude, of course, was kind of like, hi, how you doing? Very polite, as I said.
Yeah, and Claude, it advertises itself as a sort of safe AI.
Right. So it talks to me in very, very broad terms, very book answer-ish in terms of this kind of stuff. But one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to see what it would do if I actually wanted to exploit a target. So let's assume for a moment, I'm going to talk about Windows 7, because I have a couple of Windows 7 boxes in here that are very vulnerable to stuff. And one of the services that I wanted to talk about was this service called SMB, which is the file and print service on your Windows boxes. Server message block is what it stands for. And it's required if you're doing like file sharing or print sharing, or it'll use other ports if necessary. But it's very vulnerable, but it's also a very necessary protocol. So I ran it through some different platforms, and I ran it through ChatGPT first. And ChatGPT basically said, hey, I don't know if you want to actually do that. Where's my ChatGPT window? Come here. And so it came back and it's going to say, oh, I can't do stuff. But the answer is a little bit different in some cases. But now what it's going to talk to me about here is, again, some basic things. But it's not really helping me to hit this target. That's a pretty generic answer. So then I came over here to HackerGPT and I said, I want to know the same answer. And then it actually gives me things that I can use with the Metasploit framework to actually look for this stuff. So it actually talks about the different things that I can do. But one of the things that I noticed about this thing is you still have to understand a little bit about what's going on, because the answers in here are not exactly accurate in that particular case. So some of the exploits they're talking about are not necessarily vulnerable in this particular case, especially when it talks about Eternal Blue. This is not the exploit for Eternal Blue, which Eternal Blue is an exploit that was out there. It was something that WannaCry used, if anybody's heard of the ransomware WannaCry, and several other types of engines. But I wanted to find out who was going to give me the best gouge. So this one actually gave me some very, very useful ability to actually do this stuff. It talked again about Eternal Blue. It talked to me about using it. And this one's actually correct in terms of its settings, with the exception of one thing. So it'll actually walk me through this thing. And if I wanted to, I could actually use this to hit a box. One of these variables is wrong. So this variable over here is old Metasploit, like 2012 Metasploit framework. So this is not correct for that variable. But all the rest of the stuff in here is spot on. And even Copilot, which is Windows, Microsoft should actually not tell me how to hack their system. But eventually it'll come up and do some stuff.
Looks like we'll have to give Microsoft a call, Nick.
And tell them what?
Well,
Tell them, don't, what are you doing? Why are you telling me how to use this? Because look, it's telling me this stuff. But even their stuff is actually incorrect, because the check function doesn't work with this particular exploit. Again, this is stuff that you need to understand and play with this stuff. And I teach classes on all this stuff. UMBC Training Centers has classes on all these things, from the very basic stuff, like understanding basics of networking, all the way up to Wi-Fi hacking, taking down power plants, industrial control systems, and everything in between. And I teach about 40 different classes for UMBC Training Center. So we have stuff that you guys might be interested in taking. And since you guys all know me now, you can reach out to me for any kind of questions. And if I'm not on the podium, I'll be happy to sit down and talk to you for a few minutes. But it walks me through this stuff in a very, very good way. I think Gemini also gave me some good gouge. But of course, we see all this stuff about how to hack this thing. In this case over here says, I'm sorry, I can't really help you too much. But I wanted to know, more importantly, I wanted to know about countermeasures. What can I do to protect my system? Because everything we've talked about now is, what can I do to exploit my system? But I wanted to know if it would tell me about countermeasures. And it absolutely did. It told me about applying different types of things, what kind of things to prevent this, making sure that you turn on stuff. And some of them actually gave me some really, really good answers in terms of specifics. So like they come over to HackerGPT, ask the same question. And it looks pretty much the same answers over here, but it actually gives me specific Microsoft hot fixes that I can actually put into place.
So this is the official ethical portion, right, Nick?
Yes, this is the ethical portion about this thing. So maybe I want to know, can you help me write a firewall rule to stop and it'll actually talk to me about this stuff and give me stuff. And in some cases, like ChatGPT, I think if I said, walk me through setting up a firewall rule on Windows to block eternal. Keep going down. And this one actually walks you through exactly how to do this. And it actually tells you all the different things that you need to do and setting up this particular rule. So it actually is helpful from the perspective of stopping stuff. But what I thought was really cool is, so I want to go in here and I want to actually exploit this computer. So if I
Hey,
come over
Nick,
here,
so
yeah.
sorry for bothering you, but Eternal Blue. Give me a quick, a brief background and maybe history on Eternal Blue,
So
please.
sure. So Eternal Blue is an exploit that was developed back in the early part of the 21st century, back in like about 2000. Well, it's been around for a long time, but 2017 is when they finally patched it. Um, Basically, what it does is it uses some of the openness of the file and print services service on Windows 445. And what it does is it allows you to uh, exploit that and have it, dump you down on the system as um, a system administrator or the actual system itself. It works on Windows 7 and Windows 2008, and I think it works on Windows 8 as well. But those are the only systems that are vulnerable to this thing. But like I said, the way it works is it basically knocks that service and allows you to get in there. And typically it's going to dump you into the printer spooler service that you have running on your system. Is that good?
Yep, thank you.
Welcome. So it's actually going to walk me through setting this thing up, which is very, very nice. So let's assume, and it doesn't give me everything, unfortunately. It only talks to me about exploiting this thing. So with this in hand, if you remember earlier, one of the things that it actually asked me to do was run nmap. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool called nmap, which is basically a host discovery and port discovery tool that does scanning against ports and IP addresses. And I'm going to look for specific hosts that I can actually get to. So let's say, for instance, I go to a grocery store. I'll just say a plain old grocery store. And I know that the person there that works in the server room likes to go on smoke breaks, and he typically likes to smoke 2 cigarettes at a time. They're having problems with their air conditioning. And so they prop open the server door, and this guy goes on the smoke breaks and leaves the server door wide open. So here's Nick, comes over to this particular store. And again, I'm not condoning this. And I plug into the switch, because that was the question I asked earlier. If you remember, I said, if I plug into the switch, what can I get? And so then in this particular case, it actually gives me an IP address. And so what I can do, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that people can see it, is I want to find out if there are any boxes out here that I can actually hit. So I'm given what's called a CIDR notation, which is a network address for a block of IP addresses, and I'm going to not hit mine. And so this is going to go out there, and it's going to find some hosts that might be vulnerable to my exploits. And this is what an attacker would actually do. Plug into the switch, look around, see what's out there, then this thing's going to spit out that stuff to me. And so it tells me that there are 2 hosts out there that I can actually hit. So now I want to actually see what those 2 guys are running. So I'm going to run what's called a SYN stealth scan to find out what ports are open on these folks. And so look, both of these boxes are running port 445. Well, I want to find out whether or not they're vulnerable to Eternal Blue. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kick off my Metasploit framework console, because that's what the system told me to do. And I want to see if these guys are vulnerable. So I'm going to use a module in this system over here. Scanner, SMB version. And so I want to see what operating system is running on that box. So I'm going to set my target to the actual two boxes. And it comes back and tells me that they're both running Windows 7. So knowing that, then if I go back to what Microsoft told me, it said to find Eternal Blue. So I see that it's there, and next thing it told me is to use it. If you guys remember, it told me to use this exploit. It told me to set the R hosts. And I got some chat going on. Oh, never mind. All right. So I'm going to set the R host, and I'm just going to hit one box for this particular demonstration. So I'm going to hit 251. Now, the next thing that HackerGPT told me was that I needed to make sure that I actually set up. Let me go back and do this. I'm going to grab this and run this particular thing in here, ask this question so that it'll actually tell me. So it told me to start the navigation stuff, look for the exploit. And again, it told me the wrong exploit, but that's okay. And then it told me setting up this stuff over here. So the next thing it told me to do is to set the payload. So then what I do is I come over here, and now I'm going to set the payload. And it told me that I need to use something called a interpreter shell. So Windows. So I come over here, and it's going to give me a couple of options. It wants to know who I wanted to call back to. And that's what HackerGPT told me. And it did tell me to change my L port, but anybody that's out there in the cybersecurity world that's done this for a while knows that if you see port 4444, that is a clear indication that somebody's trying to hack your system. So I'm going to use something a little bit more stealthy. So I'm going to change it to 443. And I'm going to exploit this box. And that's just using the stuff that HackerGPT told me about. And in that particular quick system, that's not going to give me system in this particular case. It got me onto the system. Oh, hold on a second. So sometimes it gets a little bit wonky because you're knocking over a service that was people spent billions of dollars trying to make sure doesn't break. So anytime you're doing a demo, of course, everything's going to fail the first time, but that's okay because we'll come back and do it again. All right, screw you. 252. I'll hit this guy. Let me change the L port to something else. And these two boxes are very vulnerable to this kind of stuff. So just with a couple of questions that I asked the system over here, now I'm system. So now, for anybody that understands what the next step you do in that is that we're going to go ahead and grab all the password hashes. So I can take all these password hashes now, and I can take them offline and run something like John the Ripper against this, and I can crack all these passwords, which would take a very, very, very short period of time. But that is the coolness that is with this particular thing, because here's all the steps it told me to do. In this case, they didn't tell me to actually put up a payload, although I needed to. But if I went to some of these other folks, like this guy here. So this one it told me exactly what to do here. And then, of course, clean up your mess, clearing the event logs and whatnot. So this is what bad guys are doing, but this is also what good guys are doing, because as you saw that I was able to do a couple of different questions on there and some countermeasures, and there's some basic stuff that I can do to prevent this. Even something as simple as the firewall that comes with Microsoft is enough to stop script kiddies from using Eternal Blue against your network. Doesn't mean you can stop a social engineering attack, which I'll save for another day. But it definitely will stop most of the people who don't really understand these tools. They kind of just throw them out there. So one of the things I wanted to ask before I turn this back over to Tom is if there are any kind of demonstrations or other things that you want me to do in the future for these things, because I will be more than happy to help out and do different ones. If you guys want to work on password hacking or password defeat or locking down the system, if you guys actually want to go into that, I can show you how we can actually physically lock down not physically, but lock down the system based upon these different AI engines giving me that information. So asking the questions in the right way can get you stuff. Sometimes if you ask it wrong, like if I say, how can I hack a box? ChatGPT is going to be like, yeah, no, that's not a good idea. But then if I use something like HackerGPT, it'll actually walk me through that a lot better. But this is the kind of stuff that's out there. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and I was thinking, if there are any topics in related to cybersecurity and AI, go ahead, throw it in the chat, and we'll keep a we have a log of that, and we'll be able to see what topics people would like to see in future lunch and learns.
Right. So here is the last thing I'm going to throw up there for folks so you can see this. So if you guys want, here's my contact information if you ever want to get in touch with me or ask me questions. But like I said, I'll be more than happy to do this stuff whenever you want. If you call me on the phone or if you leave me a voicemail, make sure you tell me who you are and what you are, because I get lots and lots of solicitation calls, and I usually will ignore them unless I recognize who it is. But you guys are welcome to reach out to me at any point in time. Now I'm going to open up the floor to I'm going to turn it back over to Tom, and I'm going to open up the floor to any kind of questions you might have about any of the stuff that I went over today. You can ask me anything.
Or we can throw it in. Let's see. Okay. Good. So, well, thank you very much. I just wanted to thank everyone for attending. Nick, thanks so much for walking us through that. Again, we would love to hear from folks. This is a series of upcoming lunch and learns. Actually, we have one next week as well. We'll be doing sort of a fireside chat about some of the new developments that were announced the last couple weeks. Gemini 1.5, the text to video tool that OpenAI released a week ago called Sura, and we'll just it'll be more of a talk about some of these new developments in AI. So if any of you would like to, we have a Slack community that we invite everyone to learn from one another. And so we would love to see you there. You can either there was a link posted in the chat, or you can go ahead and scan that QR code. But we hope to see people at an upcoming lunch and learn. Thanks again, Nick. Really appreciate your time. And have a great day, everyone.